Hello guys, welcome to my channel Dead Cities Diary. Imagine a castle straight out of a Disney movie. It has tall, pointed towers, hundreds of windows, and it sits high up on a hill surrounded by a deep, dark forest. For a long time, this place was real. It was called the Château de Miranda, or mostly known as Miranda Castle. It looked like a place where a princess would live, but its story is not a happy fairy tale. It is a story about war, wealthy families, sick children, and a slow, sad destruction. Located in Belgium, in a place called Celles, this castle stood for over 100 years. It was one of the most famous abandoned buildings in the whole world. Photographers loved it because it was beautiful, even when it was falling apart. But if you try to visit it today, you will find nothing. The castle is gone. In this video, we are going to explore the history of Miranda Castle. We will look at why it was built, who lived there, and the sad reasons why this magnificent building was wiped off the face of the earth. To understand the castle, we first have to understand the family who built it. They were called the Liedekerke-Beaufort family. They were French nobles, very rich and powerful people. But in the late 1700s, France was a dangerous place for rich families because of the French Revolution. The people were fighting against the kings and queens. So, the family had to run away to save their lives. They moved to a quiet area in Belgium. At first, they didn't live in a castle. They lived in a nearby farmhouse called Veuves. They stayed there for many years, waiting for things to calm down. As the years went by, the family's power grew again. By the year 1866, they decided they didn't want to live in a farmhouse anymore. They wanted a home that showed everyone how important and wealthy they were. They hired an English architect named Edward Milner. He was famous for designing beautiful gardens and houses. They gave him a huge task: build a summer home that looks like a palace. Construction began in 1866. It was a massive project. The castle was designed in a style called Neo-Gothic. This means it was meant to look like the great cathedrals and castles from the Middle Ages, with lots of sharp points and stone decorations. The central clock tower rose nearly 200 feet into the air. It was a statement. When you looked at it, you knew a powerful family lived there. Sadly, the architect, Edward Milner, died before the castle was completely finished. But the family continued the work. They added beautiful gardens, stables for their horses, and fancy rooms for their guests. For a long time, this was their summer paradise. The family would come here to relax, host big parties, and enjoy the countryside. It stayed in the Liedekerke-Beaufort family for generations. They lived a life of luxury here until a major event changed the world: World War II. During World War II, the castle was taken over. German soldiers occupied the building. There was some fighting nearby, but luckily, the castle was not destroyed during the war. However, after the war ended, life changed for the owners. The family decided they did not want to live there anymore. Maybe it was too big, or maybe the war had changed how they felt about the place. In 1950, they made a decision that would change the castle's name and purpose forever. They rented the castle to the National Railway Company of Belgium. The railway company turned the fancy castle into a holiday camp for children. These were usually children who were sick or whose parents worked for the railway. It was renamed Château de Noisy. For the next 30 years, the castle was full of life. It wasn't full of rich nobles anymore. It was full of laughing children. They played in the gardens, slept in the big halls, and ate in the fancy dining rooms. For many people in Belgium, this is their fondest memory of the castle. This happy period lasted until the late 1970s. But old castles are very, very expensive to take care of. The heating bills were huge, and the roof needed constant repairs. The railway company realized they could not afford to keep the holiday camp open. In the late 1980s, the children left, and the castle was handed back to the family. But by now, the building was old and needed a lot of work. The family tried to sell it. They looked for someone to buy it and turn it into a hotel or a museum. But the cost to fix the castle was too high. Nobody wanted to buy it. So, the family made a tough choice. They locked the doors and walked away. In 1991, the castle was completely abandoned. And this is when the real tragedy began. Without anyone to heat the building or fix the leaks, nature started to take over. Once the castle was empty, it became a target. Thieves broke in and stole the beautiful fireplaces, the marble floors, and the wood carvings. Then, in 1995, a huge fire broke out. The fire destroyed a large part of the roof. Because there was no roof, rain and snow fell directly inside the house. The wooden floors rotted, and the beautiful blue ceilings started to crumble. Even though it was dangerous, the castle became famous on the internet. Urban explorers, people who love exploring abandoned places, flocked to Miranda Castle. They took amazing photos of the decaying staircase and the spooky clock tower. These photos went viral online. People all over the world fell in love with the ghost castle. It was beautiful in a sad way, but the owners were not happy. They were worried someone would get hurt or killed by falling rocks. By 2013, the family applied for a permit to demolish the castle. They said it was too dangerous to keep standing. This made a lot of people angry. History lovers and the people of the local town signed petitions. They begged the government to save the castle. They said it was a piece of history that should be protected. However, the damage was too severe. Another fire happened in 2017, which weakened the tower even more. The family refused to sell it to the town for a low price, and the government refused to pay the high cost to fix it. So, the decision was final. In October 2016, the demolition machines arrived. Piece by piece, the crane tore down the towers. The famous clock tower, which had stood for 150 years, was knocked down in just a few minutes. By late 2017, Miranda Castle was completely gone. Today, if you go to that hill in Celis, you will only see grass and maybe a few loose stones. Miranda Castle reminds us that nothing lasts forever. It went from a home for the rich, to a sanctuary for sick children, to a famous ruin, and finally, to nothing but a memory. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe for more.